could join me today. Today we're going to make my prize-winning chocolate cake. Just recently, once again, I won the family reunion chocolate cake recipe. And my cake was gluten-free, and it was one of 4 other cakes. So there were 5 of us all together, and mine won over 4 regular flour cakes. You can believe that. I was going to be pleased with myself if I got in the top 3, but I won first prize, and now I get bragging rights. Okay, I'm going to give you the ingredients of this prize-winning cake, and you can't share it with anyone because it's a family secret. And if the other ladies know it, they'll be making the cake the next time, and I won't win. All right, so in this sifter today, I have 1½ cups of gluten-free flour with xanthan gum. I have ½ cup of cocoa, 1 cup of sugar, ½ teaspoon of salt, and ½ teaspoon of baking soda, and that's all that goes in the dry part of the cake. Then for the wet part of the cake, which makes this cake so simple and so tasty, so we have ½ cup of oil, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 2 eggs, 3/4 cup of sour cream, and 3/4 cup of warm water. And we're going to mix the wet in this bowl and the dry in this bowl, combine them, put them in a cake pan, and you're going to have the best chocolate cake you ever ate in your life. But don't tell anyone, it's a secret. So now we've got the dry ingredients. We're going to sift them all together in this bowl. I'm going to move this wooden spoon so I don't knock it off. I'm going to add my cocoa powder to my 1½ cups of gluten-free flour with xanthan gum. Very important. I'm going to add the salt and the soda. And I'm going to add my 1 cup of sugar on top of that. And I'm going to sift these all together. It's going to make cocoa dust fly everywhere. And that's all there is to this. So I'm going to put these together so that they don't take up a lot of space. And I'll move them off to the side. Then I'm going to take my other bowl, and I'm going to take my wooden spoon, and I'm going to scoop out my sour cream. This recipe works best if all of these ingredients are room temperature. They don't have to be, but the cake seems to cook better if that's the case. So I take them out about ½ an hour before I'm going to use the stuff. Then I've got my 2 eggs. I just pour those right in there. I've got my ½ cup of oil, which I'm going to pour right in there. I'm going to add my vanilla extract before I forget. And then I'm going to take my wire whisk. Now, if you don't have a wire whisk, you can use your wooden spoon. It's just this will go faster. And I'm sure you don't want to spend all afternoon watching me whip a cake together. Now, the secret of gluten-free baking, as I've told you before, particularly with cakes, is do not overmix them. Unlike a regular cake, the more you mix it, the more light and fluffy it is. If you do that with a gluten-free cake, you're going to have a lot of trouble. Now, this is warm water, not super hot. And that's our liquid. So now we've got this liquid on this side and our dry on that side. And I'm going to take my little wire whisk, and I'm just going to flatten this around a bit, make a kind of a hole in the center. And then I'm going to pour this liquid into this dry, and that's all there is to this cake. And you see how long it takes, but don't ever tell anyone how easy it is. Let them believe you worked all day. If the secret of how easy it is to bake gluten-free food gets out, we'll have serious competition with the big name bakers in town. We don't want that. We don't want people to be able to buy better gluten-free baking than we can make at home. There. So you just keep stirring this until all the lumps are gone. And that's all there is to making this cake. Like, it is so easy. Then it goes in a 350-degree oven in a greased and floured pan. If you want to, you can make 1 square 9 by 9 square pan, or you can take 2 of these little 8-inch ones and make a layer cake. And for the chocolate cake contest, I made a layer cake because everybody knows it's the frosting that's the secret, not really the cake. Cake has to be good, but the frosting has to be better. This has a little bit of sour cream on it, so I'm just going to whip that around, and then I'm going to divide that up fairly equally between these 2 pans and put it in the oven. And that's all there is to baking this cake. So, see if I can do this without spilling it all over the place. So you just see how liquidy this is. It'll make a beautiful cake. Like I said, try to divide it equally. It's hard to tell. If you want to be really precise, which I never am, you can measure it out a half a cup at a time until you get the same amount in both bowls. There. Now I'm going to shake that around just a little tiny bit and take it to the oven. Okay, I've taken my cakes out of the oven and then I've taken them out of the pan and I've left them cool till they're completely cold. I've got my frosting here and I'm just going to show you a little trick that I use. This is just a little inexpensive bowl with a cover. So what I do with the bowl with the cover is I put the cake on the bottom, put this over the top, and if I'm going somewhere I can leave it behind because I don't have to buy something that I have to worry about picking up later. So what you do is you just take a regular knife or an offset spatula. I have one of these because I'm a baker in this house and they're always trying to buy me little gifts that I might use when I'm baking. So I'll use it to show you how it's used, and you can just use a regular knife. So what I do is I put a little bit of frosting on the top of this lid, and then I just plop that little cake right down on there. And then it won't slide around when you're moving the cake. That's the only reason to do that. So I take a little bit of this frosting and I lay it right on top of that cake. Just open this up a little more room. There we go. It's a little warm here today, so the frosting's a bit thin. But we're going to put this cake in the fridge when we're done. Now the other thing you need to remember is gluten-free baking. When you're using these products, there's no preservatives in this stuff, so you do have to keep it, either refrigerated or eat it up quickly. Now with chocolate cake, you can also keep it in the freezer when you're done, but cut it before you put it in the freezer, and then you can just take out a piece at a time as you'd like to have. If you're, live alone and you'd like to have a chocolate cake, that's your best bet. There we go. So that's all you have to do. Then you take the next piece and you put it on top of your cake and squish it a little bit. Then I'm going to use this fancy spatula just so I can show you. And then I just scrape out the rest of this frosting and plop it all right on there. But as I said, make sure your cake is cold, cold. Because if it isn't, this is going to run all over the place and make a mess. And that's the only secret there is to this. And I was so pleased to have won that cake contest. I won it several years ago before I realized I had to learn how to bake gluten-free. And I thought I'd never get a chance to do it again. But this time I thought, I'm going to try and see, maybe I'll get in third place. But no, first place. And the relative that was one of the judges, they're all first cousins, he said he didn't care what kind of cake it was the best cake he ever ate. So I was really pleased with myself. As you can clearly tell by the way I'm bragging about it. But I think if you try this recipe, you'll see how easy it is. It wasn't complicated, it doesn't take long to make, and it's quite tasty. And we're nearly done with this frosting. You just frost the edges, and as you can see, there's just enough for a layer cake. There's nothing fancy. It's just plain, ordinary, good tasting food. Now, if this doesn't look pretty, you can do all kinds of fancy stuff. You can buy piping bags and all of that. But if you're like me, you just want to make something that's tasty and easy, and your family's going to enjoy it. So this is all you have to do when you're done. You can throw it in the freezer, freeze it. Don't keep it any longer than 3 weeks in the freezer. Or you can eat it up in the next couple of days. That's my prize-winning chocolate cake recipe that I shared with you, but don't tell the family. I don't want them to have the cake at the next contest. Well, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy this recipe. The recipe will be in the video description below, and any questions, please leave us a comment.